Hi, everybody. This is Pransisko Gil-White, and we are here with a joint production, Arutz Tov and more Management of Reality, doing interviews in Israel. And today it is my pleasure, my honor, and my privilege to interview a very important politician and a very interesting man who has played an outsized role in Israeli politics for many years. His name is Moshe Feiglin. And I think he deserves to be much better known than he is, although he is well known. And I want to speak to Moshe in particular about his ideas, about the troubles that are now affecting Israel and how to get out of it, what his plan is for that, and some aspects of Israeli politics. Welcome, Moshe. It is such a pleasure to be here with you and to have the opportunity to talk to you. I want to give my audience just a very brief summary of who you are. Moshe has been a very important figure for many years in Likud. For a little while, it seemed like he might actually take over Likud because he had the second biggest movement within Likud. It was called Manhigut Yehudit, Jewish leadership. And it didn't happen. The internal elections within Likud didn't give him the win, I think, in large part because of a media campaign against him. But it was interesting that the media reacted to defeat him. Before that, Moshe had a very important role as an opponent of the Oslo process. He was leading the movement against the Oslo process that brought PLO Fatah, what we now call the Palestinian Authority, into Israel. And after that, he was also prominent in the movement to stop the Gaza disengagement that gave Gaza as a proto-Palestinian state to the Palestinian Authority, which then gave it to Hamas. People talk about a supposed war between them, but in reality, PLO Fatah just gave it to Hamas, and then all of the troubles that we've seen resulted from that. So Moshe has been a consistent opponent of these policies, and he is still talking about canceling Oslo, and we're going to talk about that soon enough. But the first question for Moshe is about his book, because you've written a very interesting book that I'm now reading. I hope to finish it in the next few days. And it seems to me the main message of your book, it's in the title. It's called Man Searching for Meaning. Would that be a good translation? Yes. You claim that the most important problem...
Man searching for identity.
For identity, forgive me. I meant to say identity, forgive me.
But it's the two sides of the same coin.
But it's two sides of the same coin. And so it seems to me your main argument is that the crisis of identity affecting the Jews generally, but even more specifically the Israeli Jews, is the source of all the problems that are being faced today politically in Israel, and that a return to a proud Jewish identity would be the beginning of the solution of all of these problems. Do I understand your main message correctly?
Almost.
Almost?
But it goes much further than that.
Okay.
Maybe the parts that you'll finish reading, you will
okay.
make it more clear. It's not about only the Jews in the state of Israel. It's about the entire world. Well, first of all, I did not have a chance to say hello to you, Professor Francesco. It's a great honor to speak with you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Everything you're writing and talking is it's a food for thinking. Food for thoughts.
I'm glad.
There's a reason why everybody deep in their hearts understand that the front line that we have in Israel, between Israel and the Islamo-Nazism of Gaza, for example, is basically the front line of the barbarians, the international barbarians, and civilization. So there's a reason why the war happens here, in Israel, in the Holy Land. They call it the flood of Al-Aqsa.
Yes.
It's the war for the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
And we have no idea what it's for. we don't know what we're fighting for. Once one side has a goal, one side knows exactly what he's fighting for, and the other side is just fighting for survival, it doesn't matter how small they are and how weak they are, they'll always win. You see, there's one way to symbolize the whole thing. When you're looking at Benjamin Netanyahu, and maybe almost everybody in his government, walking with the yellow ribbon pin, which is basically a sign of defeat. You hit me by taking our brothers and sisters as hostages in Gaza.
Yeah.
And look how painful I am. I want them back, which of course we all do. But we are not just an armed ghetto here in the land of Israel. We came back in history as a nation to a sovereign state. We are a free nation, and our goal is to win. When the Americans had their prisoners in Japanese camps, so they stopped the war and start negotiate with the Japanese to get back the soldiers that are kept in the same thing. No, everybody understood that first thing you have to do is to fight and win this bloody war forever, and make sure this Nazi regime will not appear again anywhere else in the world. And they succeeded in doing that. And for 80 years, we had peace in Europe, for example. Okay. So when you think as a free nation, you think about victory. You think about the Jews in the future that never have to face such a challenge again. No, nothing like the 7th of October should happen again. Your responsibility is not only for your brothers and sisters that are being kept in Gaza right now, but those who will be a threat in the future. That's how a nation thinks. That's how a leadership should think. But once you don't have this a free nationality way of thinking, you only think as a community in the diaspora again, as a community that every once in a while had another pogrom, and all they can think of is to lick their wounds and to somehow get their people back, pay something and get their people back and look for another location, okay? Just as we did for 2,000 years. This is what this yellow ribbon pin symbolizes. Basically, when our prime minister walks with a yellow ribbon pin, he gives a present to the Hamas.
He's saying we are weak. Is that what he's saying?
He's saying,
is that
yes,
what the ribbon says?
You heard us. Please stop. Please, let's go back to the 6th of October. That's what that pin means. Okay.
I see.
The answer is, you went to a war in order to take the Temple Mount and spread from the holiest place in the world the message of death, the shuhada, the message of the Islamo-Nazi message of tyranny and death. We're going to build Beit HaMikdash. Look at my pin. We're going to build Beit HaMikdash over there. And we, the free Jewish nation, going to spread to the entire world the message of freedom, the message of faith, the message of life. That is the real war. Once the Jewish leadership will understand that concept, victory will be very easy.
Well, I like what you're saying because it sounds a lot like what I'm saying. So I've been saying for years that Jewish Western civilization owes all of the best things that we have. Everything that we cherish in the modern world is actually a gift from Judaism. So our basic ethics in the West,
yes,
we got from Judaism. We got from Hillel the Elder's supreme genetic commandment, which is love your brother as you love yourself, right? Leviticus 19:18. And of course, the body of law that springs from that holy principle. This is how Westerners, who used to be the most violent people in the world, the most psychopathic and cruel people in the world, because that's what Greco-Roman civilization was like. I mean, these were people who thought it was fun to watch another human be destroyed in front of them, right? That's the culture of the games, of what they called games. In fact, the path forward for Western civilization, I claim, is to reestablish the importance of Judaism at the center of Western identity, and to understand that fighting anti-Semitism, in other words, defending the Jewish people and the Jewish state, is an act of Western self-defense.
Exactly.
Because we, in the process of fighting anti-Semitism, we are defending everything that is
civilization,
everything that is good in Western civilization, but also, looked from the negative side, we know that anti-Semitism is the tool of totalitarianism. Right. We have seen it time and time again. Why is it the tool of totalitarianism? Forgive me, because precisely the Jewish law and the Jewish example is what has moved Western society into the democratic spirit, where we are all equal under the law, because we are all equally children of God. So it seems to me that it's regaining our Western identity with the Jewish tradition and example at the core, the Judeo-Christian tradition, if you will, because Christianity inherits this from Judaism, but also the modern, the recognition that totalitarianism uses anti-Semitism to establish itself, and therefore we defend our own selves when we fight anti-Semitism. So tell us how is the renewal of Jewish identity and the anchoring of Western identity in the heritage we got from the Jews, from Judaism, how does the re-anchoring of Jewish and Western identity begin to solve the problems for Israel and for Western civilization? How do we do this?
Well, just to continue what you said first, I have to...
Yeah, sure.
Continue that. Notice something very interesting. When a totalitarian regime, a totalitarian figure that's starting to take over the whole world and denial the existence of God, when you have all this together, that figure has to come to a conclusion that he has to kill all the Jews.
Right.
Look at Pharaoh, for example.
Yes.
Going backwards, okay?
Yep.
He said, I am God. I created the Nile.
Yeah.
Okay, Li ori ve'ani asitini. The Nile belongs to me, and I created myself. I'm a king and a god at the same place.
Yeah.
So the result is he has to kill the Jews. Later on, Achashverosh, for example, okay, another king of the entire world, very easy comes to decision that he has to kill all the Jews. Let's jump forwards to the 20th century, okay? Hitler Yimach Shmo, okay? We all know what he decided to do, okay? Right. The war was not against the communism. That was all cover up. The war was against the Jews, and he said that. Yeah. The soldiers, the last German soldiers that were on the way to the front line, to the eastern front, to protect Berlin from the Red Army, had to wait until he'll send the last Jewish baby to Auschwitz.
Right.
That was first priority. So it's the Jews that were...
Just to be clear, because most people don't know this historical context, but what Moshe is referring to is that in the last stages of World War II, this is famous for people who study the war. In the last stages of World War II, the Nazis were diverting resources from the front, from the collapsing German front. They were diverting resources from there to the death camps because killing all the Jews was more important to them than defending Germany. This is a very important point.
And another fact that most people don't know, in 1953, Stalin, in his last days, tried to do the same thing, killing all the Jews, 5 million Jews, under the wings that were caught under the wings of the Soviet Union. Yes, everything was prepared. He was not planning to use gas chambers. Simply take them and throw them in Siberia in the snow. Let them freeze to death and hunger, and that's it.
Which makes sense because the Soviet Union was a totalitarian empire.
Yes, so it's all now why. The question is why, and the answer is when you coming with an ideology that the whole world's supposed to be your slaves, okay? Because you come instead of God, and of course the Bolsheviks did not believe in God.
Right.
The Jew become your enemy.
Right.
You see, you can never enslave a Jew.
Right.
Because they already have a king, as a king. God is the king.
Right.
Okay. So the Jew become an obstacle on your way to world totalitarian, to world tyranny.
This is the importance of monotheism, because the Jew
That's right.
is obligated never
Now-
to turn anything into a god.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. Against idolship, worship.
Yeah.
Now, what is the message of Judaism, basically? When Moses comes down of Mount Sinai, okay, with the Ten Commandments, and first the whole people of Israel sees God,
Right.
in that ceremony and giving that message to the entire humanity, generation after generation, the message of monotheism. There is God, and therefore there is identity, and therefore there is reality, and therefore there is truth to refer to. You don't imagine whatever you want. There is reality. So, because there is God, there's identity. So the first pillar is identity.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
For example, we are human beings. We are not animal.
Right.
We exist in the image of God. That's why we're allowed to eat a fried egg for breakfast, and it's not that we took away the chicken's baby, okay, or whatever. we have a human identity. We have a sexual identity. We don't decide if we are a man or a woman.
No.
God gave us
That's right.
that identity. There's a family identity. There's a different, okay? Not everything is a family. We cannot invent family as
your family is
however
not,
we like.
it's not arbitrarily
We can
large.
live with whoever we want.
Right.
But the identity of a family is an identity that God decided on, and He gave it to us. and the fourth layer is the national identity. The 70 basic nationalities were created by God. Okay. Now, so these two pillars, okay, which is identity, which I just explained, and the other one is freedom. Identity and freedom. How do we get our freedom from God? Because Moses did not only come down from Mount Sinai after we all saw God. He came with the Ten Commandments. Now, the Ten Commandments, the basic rules, the basic moral code, is not something that the king invented. Human beings invented. God gave it to us. What does it mean? That God that we all saw, okay, gave us the rules. What does it mean? It means that the strongest king and the weakest, servant,
Right.
okay, both not allowed to kill. Not because he can't and he can, because God don't allow it. So we all equal under the wings of God. And
Right.
therefore, we all
we must
free.
all respect the law.
We all free. That's why we have our freedom under the wings of God.
I see.
Once there's no God, once there's no God rules that covers everybody, the strong and the weak, the one who decide what the rules are going to be is always going to be the strong. The king, this king or that king. And the first command that will be taken out of the Ten Commandments, when that happens, is lo tirtzach, do not murder. So we see how communism, where there's no God,
Right.
brings to hundreds of millions of bodies.
Yes.
Okay, death.
Yes.
When there's no God, there's death. So that's the message. That's the message of Judaism. Now, what we saw at the 7th of October is something amazing. We saw the reaction of two ideologies that are looking to destroy civilization and combine together against the Jewish nation and the state of Israel. Okay, who are these two ideologies? The immediate one, of course, is the Islam. Wherever, look at history, wherever the Islam gets through history, green become yellow. There's no civilization can be developed under the wings of Islam. Okay, the first commissioner that the British put on Sinai. His name was Darvis, Lord Darvis, if I'm not wrong, said that the Arab is not the son of the desert, he is the father of the desert. Okay? You're an historian. Check it out.
Oh, I know about
Okay?
this. Yeah,
Okay. Wherever that ideology gets, become a desert.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't know if you do you have a cell phone or washing machine or a car that was manufactured in an Arab country. Look, maybe in Iraq, maybe in Egypt.
Not really.
Not really, right?
No.
So even to pump out the oil, they have to bring companies from Europe. Okay, so the curse of Ishmael. Okay. Al charbecha techia, you will live on your sword. It's a barbarian culture that lives on robbering, on death,
stealing,
and
yeah.
stealing. It's not a culture that can develop new life and richness to
Well, we see this especially in Qatar, don't we? Because Qatar is a slave state.
It's a total slave.
It is governed by a jihadi ruling class.
Thousands of slaves were killed in order to have the Olympic Games
Right.
there. Okay.
Right.
So yes, so that's the idea, the direct ideology.
And that's very symbolic, isn't it? Because Qatar is the state that attacked Israel on October 7th.
Yes,
Qatar
yes.
is the sugar daddy of Hamas, right?
Now they believe in God. They believe in God.
Well,
Islam definitely believes in God.
Well, they believe
But
in a God.
They believe in a different God.
Right.
Their understanding of God
Right.
is basically
Very different.
Death.
Right.
Death. They glorify death. Shuhada. They glorify death. Their God, Muhammad, their prophet, is basically the kind of killers that we saw at the 7th of October.
That's right.
That's, you know what I'm saying? Islammo-Nazism, what we saw at the 7th of October is worse than Nazism.
Well,
the
it's
Nazis tried to hide what they did.
Oh, I see.
They had kind of a shame of what they did.
see.
They did not public in the whole world the gas chambers. Okay, these guys did what they did, killing children, raping women, cutting, whatever they did.
Totally public. Yeah, they bragged about it.
They published it. Spiritually, it was done as a religious act,
Right.
which is amazing. So
Right. As an act of redemption,
so
actually, for them.
It's the opposite understanding of God than Judaism, and they want to take over the Temple Mount, so that understanding of God will spread to the whole world. That's the message of their faith, okay? So you have this ideology that attacks us directly, but you have much worse ideology that attacks us, and get together with them. And this is progressivism.
This is the Western left, the modern Western left.
The modern Western left. The progressivism came after the
Because the left was not always like this.
It's
right?
a development of the postmodernism, which is a development of modernism, and in my book I explained the whole process, how they got over there. But the bottom line is that progressivism is the new version of the communism, of the Bolshevik.
Yeah, it's a mutation of Marxism, is what it is.
Exactly, exactly. Now.
They call it cultural Marxism. I think that's a good moniker.
When you see those students in the university in America gets together with those Arabs, when you see Greta, the environment girl, okay, at the 8th of October, or immediately after these horrors coming out and say, I'm in favor of Hamas.
She didn't even wait for the Israeli response.
Nothing, okay? Or when you see
So she was actually celebrating a massacre.
Yes. More than that, you see the International Women Organization that will not come against the terrible sexual violence.
Yeah. It took him a long time to say anything about the Jewish women.
And even if they said, they basically said
exactly,
nothing.
I agree.
And you see the international gay movement that will not come against at the 7th of October. Basically, you see all the arms of the same octopus, named progressivism.
Okay, so we have an alliance between progressivism and jihadism against the Jewish people and the Jewish state.
Okay.
However,
so we understood why Islam is against us. It's because they want their God, not our God. Progressivism is against Israel, the Jews, and looking to everything that will destroy them, okay? Because progressivism is looking to erase, to take God out of our picture altogether. We are God, and that's why we invent the identity as we wish, okay? The whole concept of progressivism is to eliminate the world from the existence of God.
I see.
We're taking over instead of God, okay? Just imagine that you're visiting Paris, and you see this beautiful structure, tower named the Eiffel Tower. You see the tower, you know that there was a guy named Eiffel, engineer named Eiffel, right? How if you want Eiffel to be forgotten, to be out of the picture, the only thing you can do is to destroy the tower.
Otherwise, we will always remember Eiffel.
Right. If you want to get God out of the picture, the structure of the world has to be destroyed. And the structure of the world is the different identities. That's how God created the world to begin with.
I see.
Okay? By creating different identities. There's a ocean identity, and there's the solid earth
identity of land.
There's human being identity, and there's animal identity.
Right.
There's man identity and a woman identity. The way God created at the very beginning, the world, the structure, the Eiffel Tower, which is the world, is built by creating different identities.
Okay, I'd like to
instead of this shamble that we had before, the tohu vavohu that we had at the beginning.
Right.
So the basic concept of progressivism is to destroy all identities in order to all of us forget about who's the builder of this tower, who's the Eiffel that built that tower, and get rid of God.
I see.
So you have here these two, and of course, which is the most important thing, this nation, the Jewish nation, that its very existence is against all rule of nature, of history, This nation that by its very existence says there is God, okay? When you see, I always tell non-believers, Jews, secular Jews, it doesn't matter. You can walk with earrings. You can wear clothes of, I don't know, of any nation. As long as you're saying that you're Jewish, on your forehead it says there is God. Okay? By your very
your very existence.
By your very existence, you testify that there is God.
Okay, so I want to.
So
go.
these two ideologies, the progressivism and jihad, has a common interest to destroy the Jews and destroy the state of Israel, and that's exactly what we see now. And why did I say that the progressivism is worse than Islam?
Yeah.
Islam is very weak. They have nothing. They cannot do anything by themselves. This hammer of Islam that banging on our head from the top, we could deal with that very easy. It can only be effective with a huge
Western help.
Western help, or you know, under the hammer, you have to have
an anvil.
Anvil. That's the word. Thank you. So, the Islamists are the
hammer.
The hammer. The progressivism is the anvil.
I see. Okay.
And you need both of them to really destroy the Jews. And you see how the Biden administration, that basically represented all these evil forces that created progressivism in the West, in America in particular, but in the whole West, made sure that will not win Hamas. Forced Israel to give supply to the Hamas during the war, what we just stopped right now. So that's
all right,
the war. That's the war that we have now.
So in other words, it seems to me the biggest structure of your argument would be saying something like this. Correct me if I'm wrong. That the fight against the Jews is a strategic attack against the core of Western civilization, right? And the way to defeat the Jews, let us say the main thrust of this effort is an attack against Jewish identity. Because if you can destroy Jewish identity, and more generally Western identity, then you can impose totalitarianism. People don't know who they are. That's when you can turn them into slaves.
Exactly. Right? I can prove that very easy. What was the first act that the Nazi Germans did to the Jews when the Jews went off the trains and walked into the death camps? What was the first thing they did to them? If they did not kill them,
they turned them into numbers.
Exactly. When you want to enslave somebody, you're taking away his identity.
Nice. Okay, now let's move from here to the question of canceling Oslo, because that's what we announced. So we have to talk about that. So how it seems to me that this attack on Jewish identity, on Western identity, the effort to destroy our sense of self in order to turn us into slaves, right? It seems to me that this is an attack happening also within the Jewish state. And I think the Oslo process is the very essence of this, because what happened with the Oslo process is that the bosses of the Israeli state cooperated with the effort to bring into the Jewish state, created to protect the Jews from Nazi genocides, right? They brought into the Jewish state an organization that, as you and I know, was in fact created by Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was he's the founding father of the Arab-Palestinian movement, and one of the top leaders of the German Nazi final solution in Europe during World War II. So they brought an organization spawned by the German Nazi final solution, and also the organization that created Jihadi Iran. Most people don't know about that, but PLO Fatah trained and armed Ayatollah Khomeini's guerrillas, and then created, created Ayatollah Khomeini's terrorist infrastructure in Iran. So it seems to me that there is a problem within Israel that I think maybe a lot of people who don't read too much about Israel or don't know too much about Israel have difficulty perceiving that this is a cancer that is inside Israel and that is collaborating with the outside forces that are trying to destroy the Jewish state. So tell us a little bit about that, and tell us how a renewal of Jewish identity would require canceling Oslo and how that may be done.
When Dr. Ron Pundak was the major intellectual figure in Israel behind the Oslo concept and the Oslo process. And when they did it, a few years later, in 2014, actually, it was 19 years later, when it was obvious that the Oslo process did not bring peace. It brought exactly the opposite. Floods of bloodshed, and that was before the 7th of October.
Of course.
It was obvious already.
Yeah.
He was asked by one of the reporters, it seems like, Mr. Pundak, it seems like Oslo failed.
Tell us who Ron Pundak is so that our audience...
He's a very famous intellectual. They called him the architect of Oslo in Israel. So they challenged him. It seems like the Oslo agreement and the whole process failed because it brought war instead of peace, bloodshed instead of flourishing and so on. He said, no, it did not fail because Oslo was not about peace. That's his words. Amazing. By the way, he passed away a few weeks later, so maybe he felt that he has to say the truth or something like that. But it was an amazing saying, which I talked about years before, but hearing it from his mouth is amazing.
He let the cat out of the bag.
Yes, he said, Oslo did not fail because it was not about peace. It was about, notice, Israelism instead of Judaism of the Israeli state. Okay. Now, in order to understand that sentence, you have to realize that Zionism had two forces inside it, fighting between themselves, like Jacob and Esau, in their mother's belly. Okay. It's the Jewish identity and the new Israeli identity that tried to replace the Jewish identity. Okay. The concept was that we're gonna make the Jewish nation a normal nation, a nation like all the nations, a nation that is not based on the covenant with God in Sinai, but as any other nation with a covenant with a motherland,
so
with a land.
In other words, the Israelism,
civilian nation.
Right. So the Israelism ideology was seeking to create a Jewish nation without Jews, seems to me.
Yeah, for that civilian nation, an Arab and a Jew can be both Israelis, and Judaism is just a religion, not a nation. You can be an Israeli and your religion will be the Jewish religion. You can be an Arab Israeli and you're just in any other nation. The problem is...
So it wouldn't be a Jewish state as such?
Yeah, it will be an Israeli state of all its citizens, but not a Jewish state. Which is, of course, we understand, it's a stupid concept that it will immediately lead to the erase of the Jewish nation.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, the problem is that at the beginning, it seemed like this idea is winning, because for a short while, this concept did create a new national identity that erased the old one.
In other words, many people in Israel convinced themselves that they were Israelis first and Jews second.
Right, exactly.
I see.
But slowly but surely it changed. The Jewish identity is stronger than everything, as we know. Okay. I can add to that the fact that we won the 6-Day War. Once we won the 6-Day War, the threat, the knife went off our neck. you can lean this invented new national nation concept on a threat of Auschwitz and on a threat of Arab countries. But once you win the war, and later on when Anwar Sadat comes and he wants to make peace with you, now you have to come with a positive point of view for your national existence on the land of so-called Palestinians, okay? If not, you're just another colonialist.
I see.
So the civilian concept could not give you the justification and started to shrink. And that's why we have today a leadership that think as a community, because they don't have the Jewish concept of nationality. They don't have nationality at all, and they think as a community, as leaders of the ghetto in the diaspora. I'm talking about Benjamin Netanyahu as well. Okay, once you don't have this basic Jewish faith, the end of it is that you're walking with the yellow ribbon pin, which is a defeat pin, instead of that pin, which is the Beit HaMikdash pin. Okay.
So a Jewish identity, if a Jewish identity is reinvigorated, how does that transform the Israeli state and help us win the war?
Once we stick back to who we are, to our national identity, we have a positive reason to be. We have something to fight for. Many soldiers that went to Gaza, and that's a famous story that many of us heard, I'm sure you heard it too. Many soldiers, not religious soldiers, who went to fight in Gaza, saw in the houses in Gaza the picture of Al-Aqsa. In every house. So they came back home and hanged a picture of the Jewish temple in their homes. And when they were asked, and they also put a patch of Beit HaMikdash on their soldiers.
I see.
There's a picture of it in my book, by the way. Okay, put a patch of Beit HaMikdash on their soldiers. Why? They felt they have to have a positive reason in contract to the Arabs.
I see.
In order to win the war.
Right.
So we need this positive vision, not only on the shoulders of the soldiers, but also on the suits of the leaders, in order to win this war and radiate to the entire world the message of life.
Okay, what do you say to people who comment that,
back to Oslo, just
okay,
we started
sure.
from Oslo, and
go.
Forgot about Oslo.
Go ahead.
So the whole concept of Oslo was not about peace. It was not about having agreement with the Arabs. You see, I'm writing at the beginning of my book a sentence that you have to listen very carefully. The Israeli needs the Arab in order to forget that he's a Jew.
Oh.
You understand? I need, let's say all the Arabs leaving the Knesset. That will be terrible. It'll show
for the Israeli
it'll
identity.
show that this idea of creating a new nation, okay, can only happen with the original Jews.
I see.
You cannot create a civilian nation instead of Jewish nation. It doesn't work. So we need them in a Knesset.
In other words, you need the plurality in order to support the identity that goes beyond
this invented
Jewish
identity that you try to create instead of Jewish
Right.
identity. Yes.
Got it. Okay, so what do you say to people?
So that's why they brought. I mean, you see, they have to bring the Arabs, invent some kind of a new nation
That includes them.
Instead that they're not just a terror organization, they are a nation.
Right.
You have to agree that there is a so-called Palestinian nation that never exist and never will. Okay.
Right.
You have to create a new nation in order to cut a deal, so they will live with peace with you and recognize you and you will recognize them in order to be normal.
Okay, but this is really dramatic, because then what this means is that the ideologues of the Oslo process, such as Ron Pundak, understood from the beginning
It's about identity.
That this was about identity. And also, in order to achieve their dream of an Israeli identity unmoored from Jewish identity, they knowingly introduced an organization that wants to destroy the Jewish nation into the Jewish state. This is a very dramatic move.
Basically, they're saying it's going to be my way or the highway, as they say. Okay, if Israel is going to be a Jewish state, the whole
they'd rather destroy it than have a Jewish.
The whole Zionist experiment for us is a failure, and we rather close it. And that's what we see today in the streets of Israel.
This is very dangerous, don't you think?
They're taking the situation to the extreme. When I'm saying the extreme leftist evil forces, and I'm not talking about the people that go out to the streets. They are just, poor people that they don't understand. They don't understand that being manipulated. But the mind behind it, and the huge money behind it that comes from mostly from foreign countries. And foreign organizations, big organizations, basically most of that money comes from the American taxpayer through USAID, as we've seen. Okay, we're talking about billions that are being poured into Israel in any act that destroy Israel. If anything is, for example, I'll give you just one simple thing. When the war started. Free the kidnapped Jews in Gaza was not one of the goals of the war. Check what I'm saying. It was not one of the first 4 goals of the war. It was obvious we need to win the war.
Seems obvious.
How that became the major goal of the war? Huge money was poured in to huge PR campaign.
To produce the movement.
To produce it. That's when the pin appeared on the prime minister's suit, okay? And they understand once you do that, Israel is going to lose the war.
Very interesting. Now, I have a critical question for you. Do you see a danger in Israel that these two forces will actually materially fight? Do you see a danger of a civil war in Israel?
They're eager to get there.
I see.
They wish to get there. They do everything they'll do everything they can to get there.
So there is a danger then.
That's what they're looking for. They did it in the past. These are Bolsheviks. They think like Bolsheviks.
What in your view is the way to avoid that? Because I think that if a civil war takes place in Israel, the enemies of Israel will have the opportunity to destroy it. So what is your recipe for avoiding a civil war and moving forward into a strategic situation where Israel not only can but wins the war and in so doing becomes a bulwark, a true bulwark for Western civilization against jihadism? Because all of us watching in the West who are friends of the Jews and friends of the Jewish state, we are very worried that you might lose this war, because then it means the West will probably lose this war too. And conversely, if the state of Israel defeats jihadism in this war and secures its borders, right, then I think the entire West has a chance to win the civilizational war. So it seems to me that everything might hinge on whether we can avoid a civil war in Israel so that Israel can win the regional war. So how do we avoid a civil war? What's your thinking on this?
I can come only with one solution, and this is to create a faithful Jewish leadership to the state of Israel. Because what encouraged now all these forces to go out is the door is open. Now, when I'm saying the door, look, for example, look what happens in America, okay? You had a very, very strong progressive forces represented by Biden and Kamala, okay? On the other side, you had the ideology of that is against progressivism. What's the name? I'm looking for.
You're speaking of conservatism?
Yes, yeah. Basically, those who wants those who wants to keep civilization as is. You can see the believers
to conserve Western civilization.
Yes. So those who wants the structure of civilization keep it standing and so on, believes in the family values and all that. And also, of course, those who believes in God.
Right.
Okay, it all combines. More religious, just less religious, but the civilization against shambles, against chaos. Okay.
Yep.
It was obviously that there is the leftist ideology in America, the right ideology in America. You have the leaders that led that ideology, and you had Trump who's leading that ideology. Okay, that's what you had. In Israel, you have progressivism ideology. You have leaders of that ideology that that takes over the streets. On the other side, no alternative ideology and no alternative leader who lead by that ideology.
Well, but that's you, right?
I'm trying to fulfill this gap.
So we haven't talked.
How do you see it? We talked about Oslo before, okay?
Yes.
Which obviously was a disaster. I led, as you mentioned, the fight against Oslo in the mid-90s, and on top of these waves of that fight, Benjamin Netanyahu gets into power in 1996. He gets into power, and that year, instead of erase Oslo,
he promised.
Yes, he shakes the hand of Arafat and says he found him a friend. And later on in the Bar Ilan speech, he not only shaking his hand as two politicians who talk to each other, which is worse enough, okay? Because Israel before Oslo, there was a law against even meet with this guy.
Yes,
okay?
that's true.
So later on
I need to stop you. I'm sorry. I need to stop you just to introduce a historical item that most people don't know about. It was Netanyahu, in fact, who first violated that taboo. So you're talking about there was a taboo in Israeli politics against any kind of communication with PLO Fatah. No communication with Arafat, Mahmoud Abbas, any of those guys. And in the 1991 peace conference in Madrid, Netanyahu was the one who violated that taboo because Yitzhak Shamir was forced to go to that, or pressured to go to that. We should never say forced because they're free. Right. They can make their own decisions. Right. But he was pressured by the U.S. bosses, by Daddy Bush and James Baker III, to go to the Madrid conference in 1991. Yitzhak Shamir did not take David Levy with him because they didn't understand, they had a bad relationship, and David Levy doesn't speak English apparently. And so he took Benjamin Netanyahu, who has excellent English, fantastic English, and he was the undersecretary of foreign affairs, right? So in that capacity, he is the one who began the negotiations that became the Oslo process. Most people don't realize that.
Yes, and later on, after he shook his hand, I'm talking about in 1996, he gave the Bar Ilan speech that basically accept all the concepts of Oslo.
A Palestinian Arab
First of all, there is a Palestinian nation.
Right, exactly.
The hard biblical land in Judea and Samaria belongs to this nation, and the solution is two states.
Unbelievable.
All from the mouth of
the Israeli Prime Minister
of Netanyahu, that got into power in order to do the opposite, the exact opposite.
So his campaign was, I'm going to cancel Oslo, and the minute he was elected, Oslo is the way forward.
Yes, and he basically he closed the gates of Oslo on the entire Israeli society, and from that moment, the Oslo concept was irreversible. Now, when you tell today, after the 7th of October, any leftist in Israel, look what you did with the Oslo agreement that Rabin and Peres brought on us in 94, 95, what his immediate answer is, you in power almost 30 years now. Why didn't you cancel it?
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So we are at a position that we have a problem now with both sides, left and right. It's on the concept of Oslo, both sides agrees, and when you go to a war in Gaza, not believing that you're fighting for your own land that it was taking away from you, okay, you're not gonna win that war.
I see.
So everybody's waiting now for Trump, which is amazing. I'm telling you, he's an amazing. I admire what he did, but history shows us, the Jewish nation, that when you're putting your faith in the best king, whoever it is, at the end it backlash at you if I said it correct. I don't believe it's going.
Okay, we have to close. We're running out of time, but I wanna do one last question, because it seems to me that the faith that some people are placing in Trump might be misplaced. Trump, even before he took office, was already forcing, I should never say forcing, forgive me, I correct myself, was already pressuring the Israeli government to sign the ceasefire agreement that Biden wanted.
Yes.
And in fact, the Netanyahu government did just that. He was not even in office, and he was already forcing, well, not forcing, he was already doing his utmost to get Israel to lose the war, and then the prime minister cooperated with that.
It is obvious that his heart is in the right place, but the bottom line is he's interested, what he cares about first is the American interest, and once, the first minute that the American interest will be different than the Israeli interest, everything will change, and we don't want to find ourselves in a situation of Afghanistan or Saigon or all other places that put their eggs in the American basket, as we know.
Last question. You have a new party. It is called Zehut, which means...
Not that new.
Not that new. I mean,
Right.
a party that is no longer Likud is what I mean, right?
Yes.
So you have your own party, which is called Zehut, which means identity. And you hope to become the Israeli prime minister. And if not the Israeli prime minister, at least you want to be influential enough that we can cancel Oslo. Am I correct in this?
Yeah, that's. We know from surveys that we did, but that we're already passing the threshold.
Okay.
I believe that with the serious campaign now after the 7th of October, when the soldiers coming from a year and a half of a battle that we lost. I mean,
yes, you lost.
Tremendous despair is there. People want some real change. There's a good chance of 2 digits. I mean, more around 10 mandates that we're referring to.
And if you get enough power, will you cancel Oslo? Will you make this promise?
Of course, that I'm saying it in advance. Of course, that if we will be able to to create a government, we'll do that immediately. But even if we don't, we will not join any government that will not cancel Oslo. Canceling Oslo means throw out
all the
Palestinian Authority and all these terrorists that we brought here 30 years ago. If we're not going to do that, we're going to get this 7th of October in
Judea and Samaria.
In Judea and Samaria, in Kfar Saba, in Netanya, in the heart of the country. And I'm not going to be, I'm not willing to be responsible for that. It's clear that this is what's going to happen, and therefore we're only going to join a government that will do that.
Good. Well, thank you very much for speaking with me. It's been a great privilege and a pleasure to listen to your thoughts. And I hope that your message...
By the way, my book is already translated to English. You read it. You read it.
I'm reading it in English.
In English at the Electric that I sent you. It's going to be printed in the coming month. And I believe that the message that this book is having will be very interesting, not only for Jews and Israelis, but to
for Western civilization.
To every human being that want to keep his, I call it the monotheistic civilization. That's a better understanding
Love
of
it.
what the Western civilization is.
Love it.
Whoever belongs to that civilization and don't want to end up as Sweden, for example,
Right.
should read that book.
Good. Well, here's hoping that your book starts a very widespread and profound conversation in the West, not only in Israel. I'll be looking forward to that, and I hope to be a participant in that conversation that you want to start. This is Prancisco Gil-White for Management of Reality and Arutz Tov, and I want to thank once again Moshe Feiglin for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And I hope we have many more conversations like this.
Thank you.
Thank you.